These are the answers to the Chemistry 2009 SOL test. Number 1, which of these would be best to measure 12.6 milliliters of liquid ethanol? So we have the choices of a beaker, an Erlenmeyer flask, a volumetric flask, and a graduated cylinder. Well, now that you can see what these pieces of equipment look like, which piece of glassware has the most precise markings on it to measure 12.6 milliliters? The correct answer, a graduated cylinder. Number 2, potassium has a smaller atomic mass than argon, even though the atomic number of potassium is larger than the atomic number of argon. Which of the following best accounts for this observation? So here we see potassium and argon. Potassium has 19 protons. Argon has 18 protons. So yes, the atomic number of potassium is larger than the atomic number of argon. Well, look at choice C. It says that argon has more protons than potassium. We know that's incorrect. Focus on the masses. If mass number is protons plus neutrons, and potassium has a mass that's around 39, 19 plus 20 is 39. Now argon has a mass that's around 40, 18 plus 22 is 40. So because argon is heavier, it must be because it has more neutrons. The correct answer is D. The most common isotopes of potassium have fewer neutrons than the most common isotopes of argon. In number 3, let's take a look at the pattern for valence electrons on the periodic table. The first column, group 1, has 1 valence electron, group 2 has 2, and then group 13, where boron is, has 3 valence electrons, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, and the noble gases, except for helium, all have 8 valence electrons. Now where is sodium? Well, sodium is in group 1, so it should have 1 valence electron, and therefore it has 1 dot in the Lewis electron dot diagram. In number 4, we are given a measurement, and we have to determine the number of significant figures. Now there are no zeros in this measurement. So we have 2.6632 times 10 to the second power. All of those numbers are significant. Correct answer is 5. In number 5, we have to balance an equation. We can already eliminate choice B because you can't have a coefficient of 0. Let's go ahead and stick in some coefficients based on the iron, Fe. There's 2 irons on the left. Let's put a 2 on the right. Now there's a total number of oxygens on the left. 3 plus 1 is 4. Let's balance the oxygens by putting a 2 in front of the CO2. Now we have 2 carbons on the right, so we'll put 2 carbons on the left. The coefficients I have so far are 1, 2, 2, and 2, which corresponds to choice C. Is this equation balanced? Well, if we add up the oxygens on the left, we have 3 plus 2. And if we add up the oxygens on the right, we only have 4. So this is not balanced, so the correct answer is not C. Let's try A, 1, 3, 2, and 3. Is it balanced? Well, on the left we have 3 plus 3, so 6 oxygens, and on the right we have 3 times 2, so it is balanced in terms of iron, carbon, and oxygen, so A is the correct answer. In number 6, we're given a name and we have to write the formula. So dinitrogen pentoxide, di means 2, penta means 5, looking for N2O5, which is choice A. Number 7, when ionic compounds are named, the name of a monoatomic anion, that's a negative ion, will end with which of the following suffixes? So the names of monoatomic anions are formed by replacing the ending of the name of the element with IDE. For example, hydride, oxide, nitride. So an ionic compound might be called magnesium oxide or aluminum nitride? Correct answer is D, IDE. In number 8, we have sodium chloride being placed in water to make a solution. The sodium chloride is the solute and the water is the solvent. So correct answer is D. In number 9, we are given the formula and now we have to come up with the name. So the formula is PCl5. If it was an ionic compound, that would be a metal and a nonmetal. If it's a covalent compound, that's typically 2 or more nonmetals. So phosphorus and chlorine on the right side of the periodic table are nonmetals. This is a covalent compound. We name covalent compounds with prefixes like carbon dioxide or dinitrogen trioxide. So we want to use prefixes and we want the second word to end with IDE. Correct answer is D, phosphorus pentachloride. In number 10, it says, how many electrons does the iron ion have when it forms the ionic compound FeCl3? Now the charge on iron, it varies, so it could be +2 or +3, but the charge on the chloride ion is -1. If we know the charge on the chloride ion is -1, and we have 3 of them in the formula, then that means that the charge on that half of the formula is -3, and therefore the charge on the iron should be +3. On the periodic table, we have 26 protons and 26 electrons for a neutral iron atom. But this is an ion with a +3 charge. So what happened is that we still have 26 protons, but we lost 3 electrons to form a +3 charge. So the iron ion in this compound has only 23 electrons. The correct answer is B. In number 11, covalent bonds mainly occur between, well, if it were an ionic bond, that would be a metal and a nonmetal. But for a covalent bond, it's 2 nonmetals. Correct answer is A. In number 12, the close-up on this graduated cylinder shows that the bottom of the meniscus, which is where we're supposed to read the volume, is somewhere between 4.3 milliliters and 4.4 milliliters. So the correct answer would be 4.38 or 4.39. So correct answer is A. In number 13, we have solid, liquid, and gas. Of these 3 phases of matter, the solid should have the strongest intermolecular forces, and the gas should have the weakest intermolecular forces. X is a liquid, Y is a gas, and Z is a solid. So if we're doing this in order of increasing strength of the intermolecular forces, then Y should come first and Z should come last. Correct answer is B. In number 14, we have a mass of 1.25 times 10 to the second grams. That's also 125 grams in regular notation. And we have a volume of 51 milliliters. Density is mass divided by volume, so grams over milliliters. 125 grams divided by 51 mils equals C, 2.5 grams per milliliter. In number 15, we have to come up with the empirical formula. The molecular formula is C6H12. Now the empirical formula is the smallest possible whole number ratios. For example, hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. The empirical formula is HO. Ethylene is C2H4. The empirical formula is CH2. So if I have C6H12 and I divide each subscript by 6, my empirical formula is CH2. Correct answer is B. Number 16. The diagram shows water molecules in an open beaker and water molecules that have evaporated into the air above the beaker. Which change in this system will increase the rate of evaporation? Well, the boiling point of water is normally 100 degrees Celsius at 1 atmosphere. If we add salt to the water, that will raise the boiling point, but that will not increase the rate of evaporation. Increasing the temperature of the water, water evaporates more easily when it's hotter, so that is a potentially good choice. Increasing the pressure of the air above the water, that would raise the boiling point. It would not increase the rate of evaporation. It'd be more difficult for molecules to escape from liquid to gas. Increasing the humidity would make it more difficult for water to evaporate because the air would become potentially saturated with water molecules in the gas state. So the correct answer is that hotter water will evaporate more easily, so B. Number 17, if there is an oxidation state of +2, +3, and +6 for a particular element, it will not be in group 1 or group 2 or group 13. It should be a metal somewhere in the middle of the periodic table. Those are called the transition metals, and their charge can vary. So the correct answer is B. It is a transition metal from the same period as potassium. Number 18, we're starting with 21.7 grams of NH3, and we're converting this into grams of H2. This will be a 3-step sequence. Starting with grams of NH3, we first go to moles using the periodic table. Then we use the coefficients to go from moles of NH3 to moles of H2. Then we go back to the periodic table and convert from moles to grams for hydrogen. So there's about 17 grams in 1 mole of NH3. The ratio of hydrogen to NH3 is 3:2 based on the coefficients, and there's about 2 grams of hydrogen, H2, in 1 mole. If we do this math, we get C, 3.85 grams of hydrogen. Number 19, if there is a 4 in a balanced equation as a coefficient in front of the formula Al2O3, then 4 times 2 is 8 atoms of aluminum, and 4 times 3 is 12 atoms of oxygen. Correct answer is C. Number 20, pure water is pH 7, and that is neutral. If you're an acid, then you're less than 7, and if you're a base, you're more than 7. According to the pH scale, which substance is slightly acidic? The answer is B, black coffee. Number 21, which of these is most likely to form between elements transferring electrons to form oppositely charged particles? Well, transferring electrons and oppositely charged particles are good hints to this particular type of bonding. If it was covalent bonding, then electrons are shared. Ionic bonding, electrons are transferred. So the correct answer is D, ionic bond. Number 22, a chemical change. That means that 3 of these choices are physical. Salt dissolved in water is a physical change because we're not producing a new substance with different chemical formulas. Boiling water is still a physical change because we have not changed the chemical formula of water. And then just stretching a piece of copper metal retains its chemical identity. But burning something where it reacts with oxygen and produces carbon dioxide and water, that is a chemical change. In number 23, for an equal mass of each substance, which one will require the least amount of heat to raise its temperature from 20 degrees Celsius to 30 degrees Celsius? So heat equals mass times specific heat times the change in temperature. Now they have the same mass, so that's not important in terms of comparing them. They have the same change in temperature, so it's all going to come down to the specific heat. The one that requires the least amount of heat should be the one that has the lowest value in this table. So the correct answer is glass because the number 0.5 is the lowest in this table. Number 24, we have to remember that 1 mole of gas at STP, standard temperature and pressure, has a volume of 22.4 liters. If we're starting with 51.0 grams of ammonia, NH3, we first convert from grams to moles using the periodic table. Then we convert from moles to liters using the 22.4 information. So first we're going to divide by 17, the molar mass of ammonia. Then we multiply by 22.4. The correct answer is 67 liters, so that is C. Number 25, which substance will release the greatest amount of heat when 1 mole is frozen? The molar heat of fusion is the heat required to melt 1 mole of solid at the melting point. And melting is an endothermic process. Heat is absorbed. Which substance will release the greatest amount of heat? The opposite of melting is freezing, and that is an exothermic process. So of the 4 choices, since 9.87 is the largest number for the amount of heat per mole, the correct answer is B, benzene. Number 26, a student hypothesizes that bromine has different chemical properties from krypton. The periodic table supports this hypothesis by indicating that, well, bromine is in group 17 and has 7 valence electrons. Krypton is in group 18 and has 8 valence electrons. So they're both nonmetals, so choice A is not true. Bromine is actually lighter than krypton, so choice B is not true. They're not in the same family. They're in the same period, but families are vertical columns and groups. So the correct answer is D. Bromine and krypton have different numbers of valence electrons. Number 27. A mixture of gases with a pressure of 800 millimeters of mercury contains 10% oxygen and 90% nitrogen by volume. What is the partial pressure of the oxygen gas? Since 10% of the mixture is oxygen gas, what's 10% of 800 millimeters of mercury? Well, 10% of 800 is 80, so the correct answer is B. Number 28 has 4 graphs, but really only 2 of them are worthy of our attention. So let's get rid of choices C and D because those graphs are showing really inconsistent trends. So it's either a direct relationship, which is choice A, or perhaps an inverse or indirect relationship, which is choice B. So we're looking for the relationship between volume and temperature. When a gas is heated, its volume increases. So a balloon will expand when heated, and it will shrink when it's cooled. That is a direct relationship, so the correct answer is A. Number 29, one example of an ionic compound is, so we have F2, which is 2 nonmetals. We have CO2, which is also 2 nonmetals. HBr, hydrogen and bromine are both nonmetals. We're looking for an ionic compound, so looking for a metal and a nonmetal. So magnesium is a metal, chlorine is a nonmetal. The correct answer is D, magnesium chloride, an ionic compound. Number 30 gives us some safety information, focusing on the part of this information where it says accidental spill instructions. Ventilate the area containing the spill. So in other words, allow there to be fresh movement of air. Absorb the chemical with inert material, which means unreactive, and then place in a proper waste container. Do not place or pour down the drains. So if it's going to go in a proper chemical waste container, it's not going to go in the trash. It's going to go in a proper waste container. Correct answer is D. Number 31. Le Chatelier's principle describes what happens to a system in equilibrium when a stress occurs. All of the following could shift in equilibrium except. Now, to explain what's going on with Le Chatelier's principle, take a look at this information. If a system at equilibrium is disturbed by a change in either concentration or pressure or temperature, the system will shift its equilibrium position so as to counter the effect of the disturbance. So concentration, pressure, and temperature could cause a shift, but changing the identity of the catalyst would have no effect on the equilibrium. Number 32, what type of reaction is this? Well, if it's a precipitation, that is the formation of a solid. So there is no solid on the right side of the equation. Neutralization is an acid and a base. We do have an acid, we have HCl, but there's no base and there's no water as a product. We have single replacement and double replacement. So the correct answer is single replacement because we have an element plus a compound producing a new element and a new compound. Number 33, the Lewis electron dot structure for HCl contains 1 valence electron for hydrogen, 7 valence electrons for chlorine, so a total of 8 valence electrons. The correct answer is B. Number 34, which is the best use for a fume hood? Storing glassware? No, it's for removing toxic vapors, and that's why the ventilation of the fume hood will remove those vapors to the outside. Question 35, which of the following equations is balanced? Well, in the first choice, A, there's 1 sodium on the left and 2 sodiums on the right. The second choice, there's 2 sodiums on the left and 1 sodium on the right. In the third choice, there's 1 sodium on the left and 2 sodiums on the right. So D is the correct balanced equation. Number 36. Remember that heat, which is measured in joules, is equal to the mass in grams times the specific heat times the change in temperature. So the mass in this case is 30 grams. The specific heat is 0.9 joules per gram degree Celsius. And the change in temperature is 50 degrees Celsius. When we multiply 30 times 0.9 times 50, we get 1,350 joules. The correct answer is C. Number 37. A synthesis reaction involves A plus B to produce 1 molecule AB. A decomposition reaction starts with 1 molecule of AB and breaks down into at least 2 or more simpler substances. When an electric current is passed through water, the reaction shown takes place. So this reaction is a decomposition. Well, what if the arrow were pointing in the opposite direction? Then it would be the opposite of a decomposition, which is a synthesis. Number 38. In this situation, we have elements that are near each other on the periodic table, and every element is going to have 1 more proton than the previous element. So if you have 1 more proton than element X, you are going to be element number 4 in this diagram. Number 39. We're starting with 1 mole of methane, and we're converting this into grams of water. What mass of water is produced? So methane is CH4. We start with 1 mole of methane. We first convert from moles of methane to moles of water using the coefficients in the balanced equation. Then we convert from moles of water to grams using the periodic table. So there are 2 moles of water produced for every 1 mole of methane consumed, and water has a molar mass of around 18 grams per mole. So 2 times 18 is 36. Correct answer is C. Number 40, a chemical property that has to do with a chemical change, producing a new substance that wasn't there before. Density is a physical property, mass per volume. Dissolving in a solution is still physical because you're not producing a new substance, just making a mixture. And solid to liquid is a phase change that's not producing a new chemical formula or a chemical substance that's different than what you started with. But oxidation, for example, iron turning into rust or iron oxide, that is a chemical change and therefore is a chemical property. Number 41, which technique is best for separating the components of black ink and green ink? Well, chromatography looks like this. You might put a spot of ink on a piece of paper and then allow a solvent, so water or alcohol, to run up the paper and separate the colors. Decanting is when you pour carefully a mixture and you leave a residue on the bottom of the beaker and you just sort of skim off the top and pour off the top. Filtration involves separating particles of solid that do not dissolve and collecting them on filter paper. And evaporation is just changing from a liquid to a gas. So for separating ink, the best technique is chromatography. Number 42, what is the molarity of the solution? So molarity is moles of solute divided by liters of solution. We have 80 grams of sodium hydroxide. How do we convert 80 grams of sodium hydroxide into moles? Well, the periodic table tells us the molar mass of sodium hydroxide is 40 grams per mole. So 23 plus 16 plus 1, those are the atomic masses of sodium, oxygen, and hydrogen. If we have 80 grams of NaOH, we have 2 moles. 500 milliliters represents 1/2 of a liter. So the molarity, moles divided by liters, is 2 divided by 0.5, and the correct answer is C, 4 moles per liter. In number 43, the name for this compound, CaSO4, sulfate is SO4 2-, that's a polyatomic ion. Sulfide is S 2-, that's a monoatomic ion. So the correct answer is A, calcium sulfate. Number 44, let's talk about pH. The pH scale is defined as the negative log of the concentration of H+. So we're looking at pH of pure water is 7. And there's also something called the pOH. And those two are related in the following equation. pH plus pOH equals 14. Well, since pH plus pOH equals 14, if the pH of a solution is 4, then the pOH is 14 minus 4, which is 10. Number 45, if we take the average of these 5 measurements, all of these measurements have 3 significant figures, then the average should be reported with 3 significant figures. Correct answer is C. Number 46 is a phase diagram, and we're starting with point M and traveling all the way to point N. So what happens? 1, 2, 3 phase changes or no phase changes. It's a solid in this region where M is located. It's a liquid in the middle between the curved lines, and it's a gas on the right side. So as the temperature increases from point M to point N, it will cross over from a solid to a liquid. So that's one phase change, melting. And then it will cross over from a liquid to a gas. That's 2 phase changes, evaporation. The correct answer is B. Number 47, this has to do with the scientific method. The basis on which new scientific ideas are accepted or rejected. Well, in general, we formulate hypotheses, we develop testable predictions, we gather data, and then continue to refine, alter, expand, or reject our hypotheses based on experimental results. Once a hypothesis is strongly supported by evidence, a new question can be asked to provide further insight on the same topic. Therefore, compelling evidence is the best reason for new scientific ideas to be accepted or rejected. Number 48. Let's find sulfur on the periodic table. It's in group 16. It has 6 valence electrons. Correct answer is B. Number 49. We're going to start with 48 grams of O2. First, we're going to use the periodic table to go from grams to moles. And then we're going to go from moles to molecules. Remember that Avogadro's number is 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd particles in 1 mole. So on the periodic table, 1 mole of oxygen, O2, weighs 32 grams. We multiply by Avogadro's number. So it's 48 divided by 32 times 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. Correct answer is B, 9.03 times 10 to the 23rd. Number 50. 8.00 grams is the experimental value that the student determined in the lab. 7.28 is the actual value. So accepted minus experimental divided by the accepted value times 100. So the difference between 8 and 7.28 is 0.72. Divide that by 7.28 and times 100, and we get 9.9%. Okay, that represents the end of the Chemistry 2009 SOL test. I hope those answers and explanations were helpful. Thanks for watching.